welcome back to Aging Well, a monthly production of Somerville Cambridge Elder Services. I'm your host, Nathan Lamb, and our topic today is caregiver stress. And in this segment, we're going to talk a little bit about the Community Living Options program at Somerville Cambridge Elder Services, which can help reduce caregiver stress in a variety of ways. I'd like to welcome back into the studios my guests, Nina and Carolyn. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And I guess a good way to start, can you tell us a little bit about the Community Living Options program, what it does?
Sure. So the Community Living Options program is a private case management service, so we don't have any eligibility requirements. It's an aging, life, and geriatric care management services. So we're pretty flexible in terms of how we support our caregivers. We can be as involved as little or as much as they'd like, whatever meets their needs.
Very good. And can you tell me a little bit about how this program can help reduce stress? Maybe tell me a little bit about a scenario in general where you were able to help out in that manner.
Sure. So as I said before, it varies in terms of our level of involvement, but we can really sort of take over the person's care so that the family caregiver, if that's a situation, can kind of step away and go back to being a family member rather than the caregiver. Or we can help people who don't have somebody who's able to be a full-time caregiver for them as well. So one example of that would be a client that I had who had pretty advanced dementia. She really wanted to remain in her home, as many people do. And at the time, she didn't have any local family. Her closest family lived in Pennsylvania, so there was really no one around to help out with those things. She had a lot of friends, which was really helpful. They were kind of cobbling together her care. But they became pretty overwhelmed because she had a lot of needs, and they all had their own jobs and families and other things going on, and so they weren't able to really meet all of her needs anymore. So they called us, and we were able to allow her friends to step back and transfer all of their caregiving roles onto other people so that they could go back to being her friends, and just now when they visit her, it's a very social visit. And the things like making sure that she takes her medication, that she has food to eat, that she gets to the doctors, that her bills are paid, that her mail is collected, things like that are all handled now by us and by people that we've hired to take care of those things for them.
So it's as little or as much help as you
Absolutely.
need.
And it absolutely helped her stay in her home at a time when if she didn't have that support, would have been in a nursing home.
Absolutely. And one other thing that I've noticed in our discussions about these sorts of things is that care isn't static, and that when you're having care transitions, that can also be stressful. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. So I think that's actually probably the time we get called the most is when there's a care transition, because it is a high stress situation. So that would be a situation when you're noticing that the person is not functioning at the same level that they were previously and is going to need more help. Some clues that might be happening might be missed bills, piled up mail, not having adequate or spoiled food in the fridge, that you notice a person suddenly having more memory issues or confusion, or they have pain when they're getting up or moving around, or they seem unsteady. Those are all cues that things are changing for them and they're going to need a higher level of help. So that might involve bringing people in terms of personal care attendants and that sort of thing, or having them transition to an assisted living or even a nursing home. But we really pride ourselves on trying to make sure that we get the right level of care for that person at the time.
And one other source of stress that we have discussed recently, when it becomes sort of a complicated family dynamic issue, where there's family disagreements, I'm guessing that can probably be a little stressful. Can you tell me a little bit about if you see those sorts of circumstances, if so, how you're able to help?
Sure. So that comes up a lot. I think in general, families don't usually all agree on what the next step should be when they notice that things aren't really working out for their loved one anymore. And everyone wants what's best for that person, but they maybe have different ideas. And part of that is also maybe not understanding what the resources are and what are the realistic options for that person. So having somebody who's objective, who's a clinician, who understands the healthcare and aging field, come in and evaluate the situation and make practical recommendations can really help people get on the same page. One example is a client that I had who had 5 daughters in different states, who all had different ideas about where she should be and what she should be doing. And then, of course, she herself had a different idea about where she wanted to be. She wanted to stay in her home. Her daughters were kind of split on whether she should go to an assisted living in her area or whether she should leave the state of Massachusetts and move in with one of them. So there was a lot of debate about those issues. When I met with her, she was very adamant that she wanted to stay at home, and she definitely needed more care in order to do that, and wasn't at first open to the idea of having anyone help her with those things. But she eventually agreed to do those things in order to stay in her home and give her daughters the peace of mind that she would be safe at home. So it's often a balancing act, I think, of trying to trying to meet what her needs were and make sure that she's safe at home while still respecting her autonomy and her right to choose where she wants to be. In the end, we were able to keep her at home and increase her level of help, and that was able to satisfy everyone in the situation.
And you were able to help facilitate that discussion without it escalating and causing more stress.
Sure, yeah. I think it's a little bit different when it's coming from somebody who's not a family member. And I think they also just weren't really aware of what the options were, that it was okay for her to stay home and that she could do these things. And they worried a lot about if she was isolated and if she was lonely. And when I spoke with her, it turned out that she actually really wasn't isolated or lonely. She had a lot of things going on. Kind of too many things. Actually, we had to back out of some of her commitments, but she felt very connected to her home. It was the home that she had lived in with her husband for decades, and she had lost him a couple of years ago, and she wanted to be among their things and in their home, and that was more important to her than her daughter's fear of if she would die alone or if she would be isolated. Those weren't her concerns at all. Mm-hmm. So I was really happy that we were able to come up with a solution that worked for her, but gave her daughters that peace of mind.
That's outstanding. Well, we're just about out of time today, but we've talked a lot about caregiver stress and all these problems. Maybe close out with a little bit about the good things of caregivers, because you've both been in the homes of people providing care. Can you tell me a little bit about the good side?
Yeah, I think while it can be very stressful, caregivers also find it very rewarding, very gratifying. I think when the proper resources and tools are in place from one of our 2 programs, I think it can be a very successful experience for everyone. I think people feel very good about keeping their loved one at home where they want to be, and so we provide them the tools to do that, to succeed at it, to feel confident that they're providing the care that they want to provide. And I think it gives people extra time with their loved one or with someone that they're caring for, to just be with them, extra time to get to know them, and they kind of get to know them in a different way, and they actually end up learning things about their loved one that they never knew just by taking on the role as caregiver.
I think it's an incredible gift to be able to give somebody to be caring for them in that way. And I've been very, very moved by the compassion that the caregivers have and their dedication to doing what's best for them. And I think that it's a good chance for them to give back to the person, if it was a parent that cared for them or a friend that they've known for a long time or just somebody that they really care about. It's a way to express that love for them by caring for them.
Fantastic. I want to thank both of you for dropping by today and sharing some of your wisdom on this topic. Thanks again. And that's about all the time we have for Aging Well this month. We'll see you next time.